Okay, now we're going to combine our knowledge of GCF and factoring trinomials with X method. Let's look at this. What is the GCF of these three terms? 4 is your GCF for the number part, because 4 is a factor of 16, and 180 divided by 4, let me do that on my calculator, is 45. Okay, but look at the variables. I have 4 x's here, 3 x's here, 2 x's here. That's what powers mean. So the greatest number of x's that's common to all of them is 2, meaning x squared is what's common to all three. So our GCF is 4x squared. Now I make some parentheses, and I know I'm going to have inside a trinomial, because the original expression was a trinomial, 1, 2, 3. Question, 4x squared times what equals 4x to the 4th power? Well, we already have a 4, so all we need are 2 more x's, because x squared times x squared equals x to the 4th power. And the 4 was already there. Next question, 4x times what is going to give us 16x cubed? Well, oh, by the way, there's a negative. So we're going to say negative 4, because 4 times negative 4 makes negative 16. And since we have 2 x's here and 3 x's here, we only need 1 more x. And lastly, 4x times what is going to get us 180x squared? Well, let's notice there's a negative here, so our answer is going to be negative, and I did it on the calculator, 45. And we don't need to put anything else here because it's 4x squared. This has both of the x's needed to make the x squared right there. Okay, so let me write it a little bit cleanly on this side. 4x squared is our GCF. Our trinomial is x squared minus 4x minus 45. But we shall not stop here. The directions say factor completely. Okay, so GCF is one factoring method that we used. The other is trinomials. So look at what we have inside here. We have a trinomial. For the last quiz, you factored this. And the method that we're starting to use is X method, meaning we're going to take that negative 45, put it here. The negative 4 goes there. And we recognize that we have two different signs because we multiply to a negative. This is going to be the bigger number because when we combine, we have negatives in the end. So the numbers that subtract to 4, but also multiply to 45 are 9, which is bigger, and then 5. So these are our two numbers that we put into our binomial. So I've just factored this trinomial into two binomials. But all I've done is rewritten this. Remember, this was part of it too, 4x squared. So what we type into delta math is this. So as you see, we did two types of factoring. First, GCF, and after we get the trinomial, the next type was trinomial, X method. Let's talk about the GCF of this trinomial. If you have a negative multiplying to the term that has the biggest exponent, which is 3, and they usually write that first, your GCF should be negative. Okay? Now, I think hopefully you can tell that that GCF is going to be 5, because 5 goes into itself, but also 45 and 90. Second, we're looking at the x's and we're counting them up. X, 3 x's, 2 x's, 1 x. The most we can pull out is 1 x. So our GCF will be negative 5x. Let's make room for our trinomial. And we're just going to have x squared. Now, this sign is going to change, because in order to make positive 45, we need to multiply a negative right there with another negative number, because negative times negative makes positive. And we're going to have 9x, since we have 1x here and 1x here. That makes us our 2x's. Lastly, we're going to have 18. 90 divided by 5 is 18. Oops. Oh, no, I did it right. And we're going to change that sign from negative to positive, because when we factor out a negative number, negative times a positive makes the negative. Okay? So we've just done the first factoring, which is GCF. Next, and I'm not going to do it here, but it's just so you know, you're going to take that and do trinomial factoring, meaning using the x. I'll just write it here. So I'm not going to do the entire thing, but 18 goes up there, and negative 9 goes there. So let's talk about this word problem. It's all about these rectangles. The width of a rectangle, the width is 2 units less than the length. Okay. So a rectangle has a width and a length. Those are the two sides. There are 4 sides, but 2 of the sides are the width, 2 of the sides are the length. The area of the rectangle is this, 24 square units. So what is the length? Okay, we don't even know what the width is, but I guess for the answer, they just want the length. Okay, so this is how you're going to set these up. Make a rectangle, and you know what? It doesn't matter what the length of these are, what shape it is. Just make sure it looks like a rectangle. And go ahead and say W and L for width and length. It doesn't matter which is which. Just one of them has to be W, the other has to be L. And then read this again. The width equals, means equals 2 units less than the length. 2 units less than the length. So first of all, let's say width equals. So go over here and say W equals. That's what they're telling you. W equals 2 units less than the length. Okay, so the width is same size as the length, but 2 units less. So write that exactly how it sounds. W equals the length except 2 units less. Otherwise, they'd be the same. But what they're telling us is that it's 2 units less than the length. They're not the same, but they're 2 units less. Okay. All right, so we have kind of an equation right here representing the width. What we're going to do is make an equation so that we can solve for L. Okay? Here's the other information. The area is 24 units. So go ahead and just remind yourself, put 24 in the middle here. Okay? Something that you should know from middle school geometry, right? If you have a width and a length, width times length equals the area. If you just multiply these two together, you get the area. Okay? Well, they told you the area is 24. So let's make an equation. 24 is, and I'm not going to use W and L. Those are two different variables. I just want to stick with one variable. Okay? The L's. But you know what? I'm going to convert them to X because I like using X. I'm used to it instead of L. So we're going to say X minus 2 times X. Okay? Because one side times the other makes the area. Here's the area. Here's one side, L or X minus 2. And here's the other side, L or just X. Okay? Can you solve this? Yes, you can. This is a quadratic equation. And you say, how do you know that? Because when I distribute this X, I'm kind of doing it right to left, but it would be the same as if I wrote this way. When I distribute, what I'm going to get is X squared minus 2X. That's what my 24 is equal to. This makes it quadratic because look at my power. Power of 2. So with quadratic equations, one technique is, and you've done this in the previous quiz, move this 24 over to this side. That means subtract 24. So you have 0 on this side. But when you subtract 24 over here, you're going to get this. Okay? Our goal is to solve for X. What is X? Well, and that is what L is, okay? I like writing with X instead of L. So we're going to find out what X is by solving this equation. And you know how we're going to solve it? We're going to figure out two binomials and use X method. Okay, so the negative 24 goes up here, negative 2 goes up here. This negative tells me different signs. And I know that this is going to be the bigger number, because in the end I want two negatives to be left over. Can you think of it? Okay. The two numbers we're thinking are 6 and 4. Negative 6, positive 4. There's my negative 6. There's my positive 4. Okay? Equals 0. Well, here are my two solutions. For this one, if I want this to be 0, X has got to be 6. if I want this to be 0, x has got to be -4. Okay? Now, let's go back to our problem. And our question is, what is x? Or what is L? Well, take a guess. Which one do you think it makes sense? It's going to be one of these. Is it going to be the negative number or the positive number? You can't have a negative length. So you're going to choose the positive one. So what is x? Answer. X equals 6. In other words, L equals 6. Let's put this back into our picture. Let me redraw it over here. Here's L. This is 6. Here's L over here. 6 minus 2 is what? 4. And guess what? 6 times 4 is 24. And guess what? This number is the same as this minus 2. It all is the same as, yes, is the same as 6, which is the length, equals 6 minus 2. Okay? In Delta Math, you're going to answer the question, what is the length in units of the rectangle? The length is 6. Okay? You know, the hard part of any word problem is just setting it up. I think that doing this math may not be as difficult as it looks. Okay, and we just showed that. Once you can get to this point right here, the math is really not too hard as long as you're comfortable with the x method. But let's show how you can do the correct setup at the beginning. Okay? Again, these problems are all going to be more or less the same. You're going to draw a rectangle. The length of a rectangle, length, is always equals. Okay, this time the sum of the width and 3. Well, this is width, L and W, but L is the sum, which means width plus 3. There we go. There's the setup. The area is 40 units. Okay. So we're going to multiply these two. We're going to multiply W plus 3 times W. And that's going to equal 40. Let's do it. W and W plus 3 equals 40. Now we distribute. W squared plus 3W equals 40. Now we remove the 40 from both sides. W squared plus 3W minus 40 equals 0. Okay? If you want, again, if you want to change the W to X like I did, feel free to do that. But if you don't mind working with W's, go for it. How about this one? The width of a rectangle is, or here, there's width, here's length, but is, which equals length minus 4 units. The area of a rectangle is 21. Oh, by the way, let me go back to this problem here. What is the length of the rectangle? Okay, so after you solve for W equals something, W equals something, only one of them is going to work. Usually the other one is a negative number. Whatever that number is, this is not your answer in this case. You're going to take that number and plug it into here and then answer the question, what's the length? Okay. For this problem, you're going to multiply L times L minus 4 is equal to 21. And then you'll get L squared by distributing minus 4L equals 21. Let me just go back to x's. Minus 4x minus 21 equals 0. You're going to get an x equals something else, but then you're going to plug it back into, let's say it's this one. Take that number, plug it in right here. Well, that will be the length, or plug it into here, and then you'll be able to get the width, because that's what they want. They want the width. Okay, this is going to be a bonus question. This is similar to the first type of question, but I'll show you why it's a bonus question. Because it's going to be a little harder. The GCF here, I'm looking at the numbers. I think it's going to be 2, no more than 2. And it's going to be negative because this leading they call this the coefficient because it is next to the highest power, is negative. They all have H, but this one has the fewest number of H's. So I'm going to go with negative 2H, single H. Okay? This is going to be 6H squared. I'm going to change that sign to negative 13H. Change this sign to negative as well. And it's going to be 8. The reason this is hard, the GCF part is not going to be too hard. It's going to be factoring this. You're going to do trinomial factoring. But when you set up your x, it's going to be negative 8 times 6 that goes on top. And then, of course, negative 13 on the bottom. And after you figure out that game, they're going to be different signs. You're going to have two binomials. But this is not your answer. What you're going to have to do is take this 6 here. Okay, this is causing problems for you. And you're going to bring that 6 under this number and under this number. And kind of make a fraction out of it. Okay, and then you're going to continue. And then you will have the 2 correct binomials. But don't forget in your answer, don't forget your GCF. And this is your GCF. So when you put in your answer, don't leave this out. Okay? Once you do trinomial factoring and figure this out and figure this out, put this into delta math, including your GCF.